A very good morning on this Thursday. It's 900 hours Central Africa time here in the newsroom, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
Good morning to you. My name is Kendall Bakhamat.
Now, we will be with you until 12 o'clock today. Now, today we focus on SAA. Dudu Myeni, the former chairperson, she's been removed as the chairperson of SAA board.
Well, we obviously want to get you involved in this conversation. I want to find out from you, what do you make of Dudu Myeni's departure as chairperson of SAA?
Well, some are asking whether it was first class or second class, but you can tell us more. Let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page.
Yeah, that's what's been said. Mr. Andrew Mochana says her departure from SAA means an arrival at Parliament to be a minister. Just wait and see. Well,
this one from Joe says she may be gone at Fly SAA, but she is heading to the office of the presidency as a deputy minister there. Well, conspiracy theories abound.
Absolutely. Something they know that we don't, maybe.
Yes, well, you can let us know what's in your mind. We'll read those comments as we continue. But we're also focusing on a poll this morning. You remember the truck bomb that killed more than 300 people and injuring 400 in Mogadishu in Somalia? Well, they say it's the biggest terror attack from the Islamist Al-Shabaab group that was launched that insurgency in 2007.
Wow, I remember seeing that coming through on social media, but we want to find out from you, is the Somali massacre getting enough media attention?
Let's take a look at our poll and see what the numbers suggest on the poll. There it is. 158 votes in, 79% of you on the continent and in South Africa are suggesting no. It's not getting enough attention. Only 21% are saying yes, it does. But you know, if there's a killing, for instance, in Las Vegas, where people were killed in the streets, of course, you see a bigger reaction to media attention to something like that.
Absolutely. Let's see what's being said by you about this particular matter and this particular poll. Doc Moses Bilani says, we as Africans are always fed Western news, forgetting to tell our own stories. Even our media models themselves on Western ideas.
This one comes from Lawrence that says, no, if it was Great Britain, the world was going to stand still. Remember what happened in France? Same thing happened. Lots of media attention from the events that transpired there, but when it happens in Africa, it's just another event. It
Absolutely.
Seems like it.
Well, that's exactly why we're talking about it this particular morning, to see where it is that we stand. Use you as our barometer. We've got a sporting question as well, Elvis. And of course, it's about what happened, what transpired yesterday in that ODI against Bangladesh. And I don't know what you make of it, but you know what? We want to find out from you at home. Are the Proteas results against Bangladesh a true reflection of South Africa's potential?
Well, we want to find out. Let me take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle, on the Facebook page. Lawrence says, yep. Where was A.B. de Villiers all along?
Of course, they hit a record smashing 176 of 104 balls, his best ever. Phenomenal against Bangladesh. Michael Bighamstola says, yes, we are one of the best teams on the face of the earth. Our only problem and the demon that seems to haunt us at critical stages is the C word. Choking, Michael says. Michael, they won the match. You're talking about choking. Michael, give them a break. Come on.
Well, they choke in very critical matches, it seems like that's what Michael is trying to say. But you can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. The Minister of Finance, Malusi Gigaba, has officially announced the appointment of 6 members of the board of South African Airways, as well as the full slate of non-executive board members to the airline. This after Dudu Myeni vacated her post. AMCU President Joseph Matunjwa says that he will seek the services of private forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan to help police stop the continued killings of mine workers in the Platinum Belt. And President Jacob Zuma will today unveil a life-size statue of the late former ANC leader Oliver Reginald Tambo at the OR Tambo International Airport right here in Johannesburg. Now, those are your headlines, but before we get there, let's just find out quickly from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. And a big deal for today is, of course, we're going to be talking about the Proteas and that smashing victory against Bangladesh. We'll talk a little bit about Pirates and their preparation for the derby this weekend against Kaizer Chiefs. And you will also see a little bit of what's going on after the UEFA Champions League with Chelsea just snatching a draw after having led 2-0 for most of the match. All this and more a little later. But for now, do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. That's coming up a little bit later, so you have to stay tuned. Meanwhile, President Jacob Zuma will today unveil a life-size statue of the late former ANC leader Oliver Reginald Tambo at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. The ceremony forms part of the OR Tambo centenary celebrations that are being held across the country. The event will be used to honor and celebrate Tambo's life and legacy. Tambo, who led the ANC in exile for over 2 decades, died in April 1993 after suffering a stroke. Now, he would have turned 100 years old on the 27th of this month. Now, for the latest on this story, we are joined by Palesa Chibusi, who is at the airport. Let's see if Palesa is up and running. A very good morning to you, Palesa. And can you tell us, bring us up to speed, what is happening there today at the OR Tambo International?
Well, it's a very good morning to you, Elvis, and a very good morning to our viewers watching from home this morning. As you rightfully said, it's one of the biggest events ever, as our viewers would recall that 2017 was declared the year of OR Tambo. We've seen celebrations from January.
Well, it looks like we've lost Palesa there. We're going to see if we can get her back on the line and bring you that story live from OR Tambo in a short while. In fact, let's see if we can connect with Palesa again. Well, she's not very clear. We're going to try and bring that for you a little bit later and bring you the full story of Oliver Tambo as that statue is being unveiled at the OR International. And yes, we'll bring you some more on that story, so you have to stay tuned. Well, I hear she's right back with us. Palesa, let's see if you are there and bring us up to speed again as to what is transpiring there today.
All right, thank you so much, Elvis. I believe everything is up and running now. Basically what I was saying is that this statue is approximately 2.5 meters high. It's been erected at the arrivals, international arrivals. So when the visitors would, be coming out at Terminal A, they will be facing this huge statue that will later be unveiled by President Jacob Zuma. So it's a program of activities today with all the dignitaries. We know that this is courtesy of the Department of Transport, of course, working hand in hand with Airports Company South Africa. So at around 11 o'clock, President Jacob Zuma will be here, but he's expected to unveil and give his keynote address at around just after midday here. So we are still here. We'll be bringing you all the different activities. So earlier on our sister program, Morning Live, we had a conversation with AXA CEO Bongani Maseko, who was basically saying that they saw the importance and the significance of having the statue here, more so at international arrival, so that when the guests and the tourists come here, they get to see OR Tambo, they get to know more about his legacy and of course what he stood for. You'd recall that the airport was renamed after OR Tambo in 2006 by the former president Thabo Mbeki. So there are a number of activities that are also lined up today. As you know, that next week on the 27th of October, OR would have turned 100 years. So this is part of the build-up to the bigger celebration, Elvis, that will take place in the Eastern Cape next week.
What is on the program besides the unveiling a little bit later when the president is going to be there? What's on the program today?
Well, that's basically the main event, but what will happen is that the executive mayor of Ekurhuleni, Mzwandile Masina, is also here. The Minister of Transport is also here. So there's going to be a walkabout from ETNS, and the president will be starting at ETNS, and then they will be coming down here to the arrivals. And that will be speeches from the different dignitaries.
Well, we're not having much luck with that connection there. We're going to see if we can connect with Palesa a little bit later at the OR Tambo and bring you the story from there, so you don't want to miss it. Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance, Malusi Gigaba, has officially announced the appointment of 6 members of the board of South African Airways, or SAA, as well as the full slate of non-executive board members to the airline. Johannes Bekemusi has replaced Dudu Moyeni as the chairperson of the board, while Nolita Fakude has been appointed as the new deputy. The changes will be effective from the 3rd of November, when the minister will have a special meeting with the board.
If you recall, there was a cabinet statement that came out about a year ago that spoke to elimination of the tenure of board members on all state-owned companies. When Minister was appointed as the Minister of Finance, the question of the SAA chair came up. The Minister's response has always been in line with what Cabinet had agreed to, which would limit the tenure of board members serving at SAA. He has repeatedly said that the chairperson, amongst others at SAA, would be removed from SAA once the tenure had come to an end. And you recall the extension was done so that SAA could focus on its financials, and ministers now come to the conclusion of that process, because he's going to have a special meeting on the 3rd of November. So the tenure of the SAA board chair, as the minister said, is something that has naturally reached its conclusion. And we hope the new appointment of the new chair and the other supportive members of the board that have been appointed strengthens the position of SAA and begins to strengthen the interventions of turning itself around.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit more about the new chairperson, JB Magwaza, and of course the deputy chair, Nolita Fakude.
Well, the chairperson is quite an experienced private sector player. He's been at the head of a number of big companies. He's been a chairperson for extensive periods of time. He's been a chairperson of the Inkuzi Investment, another property company. So he's quite a well-respected person in terms of being a chairperson, a person that understands how private sector works. Expecting to bring that experience into SAA to lead SAA without being a political disruption or an operational disruption to how our SAA needs to operate. The deputy chair, Nolita Fakude, is also a very well-known person in the private sector circles, from SAFO to a number of entrepreneurial things that she's been involved with. I think her experience in the private sector, her business acumen is going to strengthen SAA. Those are some of the interventions, but there are also new board members which also strengthen the board. Some of those are aviation experts. Other of those are business people. So we think SAA is getting a great with some of the people that are coming to the SAA board.
Do you think this is the final strategy to move this airline forward, and perhaps the last attempt of doing that?
Well, it's an important step forward. I think we shouldn't. I don't think we should minimize the problems of SAA to any particular individual. And I want to put this quite clearly, that to say that all of the problems of SAA are a result of Dudu Moyeni is just completely inaccurate. There's a long story of decisions that were taken at SAA that have put it in this current position, including how it was moved out of Transnet over a decade ago. All of these decisions that have been taken haven't always resulted in the best outcomes for SAA. So yes, having qualified, experienced, well-respected people on the board of SAA is an important step forward, but there are a number of other operational interventions that need to be taken. There are a number of other policy interventions by government that need to be taken, and there's a lot of discipline that's going to be expected of the executive of SAA for it to turn itself around. So yes, it's a part in the turnaround strategy, but it's not in itself the complete answer to fixing SAA. But Indeed. It's an important start.
Indeed, I mean, this is, of course, there's a long way ahead for the airline. But just finally, as we wrap up this conversation, Maitwami, the impact that this new board is going to have on implementing change at SAA, they've obviously been instructed that this has got to be a fast change and something that, of course, is going to just turn this airline around.
Absolutely. Minister has repeatedly said that the patience of the South African public is running out. We get tired of hearing about negative stories about SAA. We understand the environment that it's in, but it's time for SAA to make the tough decisions it needs to make. The question of what to do has already been answered. There's been a number of turnaround strategies that have already been produced for SAA. So what needs to be done is known. What we need is people that have the will to implement those tough decisions. So Minister is of the view that these individuals will have the will. Having a CEO who's also respected in the private sector is also going to give us a person who has the will to do what has to be done. So Minister will continue to apply pressure on the board of SAA to implement the turnaround strategy, give confidence to the public, and eventually reach commercial viability for SAA. As Minister said, that is not insurmountable. It is something that SAA can achieve, and we're going to make sure that they achieve it as quickly as possible.
Well, Dudu Myeni left the airline, SAA. There was some controversy about her being there, and that's why we're asking you this question. This morning, I'd like to find out from you, what do you make of Dudu Myeni's departure as the chairperson from SAA? Let me take a look at what you are talking to me about on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page, on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. This is what some of you are saying. This one coming from Mahafa Noel says, good riddance. Hopeful she didn't steal anything when she packed her bags. This one coming in from Doc Moses Filani says, as long as there are still evergreen contracts and lack of transformation at SAA, nothing will change. A lot of questions around those evergreen contracts and, of course, transformation at the SAA. Will that be spearheaded by the new board? That's something we've got to put a close eye on it, and probably we'll speak to SAA sometime next week. Meanwhile, AMCU President Joseph Matunjwa has urged mine workers in Marikana near Rustenburg in the northwest to be united and look out for each other to avoid further killings of their members. Now, the call follows the recent killings of the 5 AMCU members in the Platinum Belt since August this year. Matunjwa was speaking at the AMCU meeting held at Lonmin Mines Wonderkop Stadium.
Addressing thousands of AMCU members, the union's president, Joseph Matunjwa, called for unity, urging them to protect each other in order to find out who is behind the killings of their fellow members.
Comrade Masikataneni, izinto ze-union mazikhulunywe kuma-structures ze-union. Imicimbi ye-union ayingakhulunywa ngaphansi kwesihlahla. Ngibhalela uMinister uMbalula, ngimxela ukuthi ngiqala i-meeting naye esheshayo. Ke sizobona ukuthi kanti ukufa kukuphi kulo mcimbi wa-Upper Rustenburg.
It was initially thought to be a gathering to address concerns around the recent killing of AMCU members, but Matunjwa did not elaborate on who he believes could be behind these murders and made no mention of the 5th AMCU member who was shot and killed outside his home in Marikana on Tuesday. Police have earlier confirmed that no arrests have been made in any of the murder cases. Silwane Khachau, SABC News, Marikana, Northwest.
Staying with workers' issues, a protracted strike by the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, in Slurry PPC cement outside Mahikeng in the northwest, demanding a 12% wage increase, entered its 3rd day yesterday. Now, NUM says it gave the company a notice to strike on Sunday. The company is offering workers 6%. For more on this, we are joined in studio by Pundeguhle Mohlala, the Group Human Resources Executive from PPC. A very good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, we understand that you had a meeting with NUM yesterday. What came out of that meeting?
We had a meeting with the union yesterday, and significant moves were made by both parties, where I must first correct the fact that they were at 12%. The 12% was the original demand, but when they went on strike, it was 8.5%.
So they reduced it.
Yeah, yes. They reduced to 8.5%. And so yesterday, when we finished the negotiations, I'm happy to report that we are now 0.2% apart.
0.2%, so that's a 0.5% down from the 8.5 that was now put forward. But how did it get to that point, and why are they demanding the 8.5 in the first place?
Yeah, there's a number of issues that have been cited, obviously. Although from a management point of view, they were not realistic, because if you look at where we are as an organization and what we consider when we look at wage negotiations and what we offer from a company point of view, we were very close to reality, which is normally around CPI +1. And starting at 12, really, it was quite realistic. So coming from 12 down to 6.3 at this point in time is quite a significant move from the unions. But I think they started in a bit unrealistic point, given the circumstances that we're in at the moment.
Were those was that the only sticky point in relation to the percentage hike, or was there other problems that they highlighted?
There were other demands, but I wouldn't say they were sticky demands, because some of them are already taken off the table because they are not part of the substantive agreement. But we have conceded to some as well as an organization, such as the transportation that they required, visiting the sick employees in hospitals. We've conceded to that. So the sticky issue at the moment is just agreeing, meeting each other halfway in terms of agreeing on the wages.
So you are cementing on the 6.3%?
6.3% is the union side. We are currently at 6.1%. And parties are going back as we speak. I think they have resumed the negotiations, and I'm hoping that we will find an amicable solution to this.
Is there anything that you'll throw in the pot to sweeten the deal?
Possible. Yeah, I cannot say for sure. Possible, depending on the other issues that we need to agree on. It may not necessarily be part of the wider wages, but we are prepared to look at other alternatives that will soften the blow in terms of what the company is going through at the moment, especially on the side of affordability and sustaining the organization.
Do you only look at PPI when looking at salary increases for workers at PPC, or
not really? We look
factors?
we look at that, and we also look at company affordability. We also look at how do we sustain the organization going forward. Given that PPC has been around for more than 125 years now, we want to go on until, we want to survive until another 125 years. So with that in mind, you have to be very careful, given the state of the economy at this point in time. It's not that easy.
Well, the union says that PPC must close the wage gaps that exist within the company, as it feels that the company is perpetrating this on the workers. Your thoughts on that, and is that really relevant?
We're still waiting for them to clarify, actually, what do they mean by the wage gap? Because where we're sitting, there isn't much of a wage gap. We basically have, your levels. So we're not quite sure. They still need to unpack that and just clarify for us what do they mean by that. Because from our books, we're quite okay. We're actually paying a very equitable and fair wages.
Well, it seems very close, that gap. So it seems to be closing in terms of reaching an agreement. And I hope that you get that far. I thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
Yeah, we hope so too. Thank you.
That was Pinduguhle Moshala, the Group Human Resources Executive from PPC. Well, they're very, very close, she says. And as you heard there, they're going back to the table. There might be a sweetener in the deal to cement it completely. Now, the name of slain former ANC Youth League Secretary General Sindiso Magaka was on a hit list with names of 5 other local leaders in the Mzimkhulu area in southern KwaZulu-Natal. Now, 4 were eventually killed. This emerged at the Moerane Commission of Inquiry, which continues today.
Ward councillors Jabulile Msiya and Nontsikelelo Mafa testified today. They say all the killings are linked to a controversial 30 million rand memorial hall. Sindiso Magaka objected to the cost of refurbishing the place. He was supported by some local leaders. Msiya and Mafa say Magaka was killed for fighting corruption. Kaya Tobela and Mdu Chabisa were also gunned down after raising a red flag over the controversial multi-million rand hall.
He said to me, I'm here to alert you not to travel at night because my intelligence has notified me that since Councillor Thobela has been number 1 and Councillor Chibase has been number 2. I, as Councillor Magaqa, I'll be number 3.
Msia also says Magaqa constantly called for a forensic investigation into the whole project.
At that time, Comrade Magaqa was no longer certain about his safety because he said there were security guards that followed him and there were a lot of cars following him. Those security guards are providing security for some leadership at the IBIS.
The two claim they fear for their lives. Lungisi Kumalong, SABC News, Mayville.
Now we will cross to the Moerani Commission as soon as it starts. You don't want to miss it. But right now, let's take a look at what is trending on social media. And we start off with hashtag Dudu Myeni. SAA chairperson Dudu Myeni has failed to retain her job as SAA chair. Now this follows Parliament's approval of the new SAA board. JB Magwaza will be taking over as the carrier's new chairperson. Now there's been growing calls for Myeni to leave her post as the national airline suffered massive financial losses. Then hashtag Wonderboom Airport. 4 heavily armed men escaped with an estimated $1 million in cash during a daring robbery at Wonderboom Airport in Pretoria. The heist occurred moments after a light aircraft landed at the airport yesterday. No arrest had been made and no one was injured in the attack. And then hashtag Diwali. US President Donald Trump's entrepreneur daughter Ivanka, who joined him on Tuesday's Diwali celebrations at the White House, also took to Twitter to wish Indians across the globe a joyous Diwali. A Sal Mubarak greeting was accompanied by a reminder that she will be in India next month for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. And then hashtag Eskom Inquiry. Mineral Resources Minister Mosebenzi Zwane has denied allegations yesterday that a 30 million rand meant for the Freda dairy farm in the Free State was diverted to pay for the 2013 wedding at Sun City of a Gupta family member. Zwane was answering questions on allegations of state capture and his relationship with the Gupta family in Parliament's Mineral Resources Committee. And then Advocate Bongani Bongo was yesterday sworn in as the State Security Minister. Bongo replaces Nati Mshlobo, who was moved to the energy portfolio. Bongo has vowed to hit the ground running in ensuring that the mandate entrusted to him by the President Jacob Zuma and the Cabinet is carried out successful. There you see him in your picture. And talking about picture, the picture of the day comes from SART 3325, AB de Villiers 176 104, 15 4s, 7 6s, hashtag AB de Villiers. What an innings there by AB. Yes, AB de Villiers, hashtag SA versus Bangladesh. The comment of the day, this one comes from Advocate Barry Roo. Remember him? Well, it's a hashtag for I at Barry Roo. I'm even afraid to sleep now. Am I afraid I may wake up in India or Cape Town? Hashtag Dudu Myeni. Hashtag SAA board. Hashtag cabinet reshuffle. Well, there you have it. Let's now take a look at what's happening in our courts today. Cape Town. A 38-year-old man from Durban is due to appear in the Bellville Magistrates Court outside Cape Town today for allegedly contravening the Customs Act. The customs officials arrested Mohammed Amin at the Cape Town International Airport. And of course, that was in Cape Town last week after he was found in possession of 2 suitcases filled with over 10 million rand in cash. The car salesman was en route to Dubai via Cape Town when officials discovered that he had failed to declare the money. He was carrying dollars and South African currency. State prosecutor then, Helene Boyson, says that the accused has 2 passports. She requested a postponement for further investigation to determine whether he had previously travelled abroad and for what purpose. Here in Johannesburg, the Labour Court in Johannesburg will rule today whether the ongoing strike by the 10111 call centre workers is legal. In July, around 5,000 call centre workers affiliated to the police union SAPU downed tools after wage talks with the employer deadlocked. Judge Benita Vichers scolded both parties yesterday, insisting that the matter should have been dealt with internally. That's where we got to leave it for now. We'll take a break and we'll keep you abreast of those stories as it continues. After that, we'll be back with more.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that Swallows are out of the ABC Municipal League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Here we are witnessing the beginning of the end of the apartheid system.
If you did a paternity test on our constitution, whose DNA would come up? Not Nelson Mandela, not FW de Klerk, Oliver Tambo.
Disaster preparedness is one of the important elements in disaster risk reduction, and it encompasses community awareness, readiness to render appropriate responses, and quick recovery. Now, fire disasters are accompanied with devastating impact, affecting both lives and properties. We've seen that happening in the Cape. The magnitude of the impacts has been severe in places with low levels of fire disaster preparedness. The Western Cape province is particularly vulnerable to fires that get destructive very quickly due to the gusty winds in the area. At the beginning of every fire season, firefighters are put on high alert to respond to fires and other disasters that may arise during the hot and windy months. Joining us now in the studio to talk about preparing for the fire season is Working on Fires Managing Director, Mr. Trevor Abrams. So very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
First and foremostly, how do Working on Fire prepare for a fire season?
We've got over 5,000 employees in the program, but every year our firefighters have to go through a yellow card assessment test, which certifies them as being qualified to go back into the operational realm again. So before every fire season in South Africa, we've got two fire seasons. One is obviously in the summer, which is mostly around the Western Cape and Southern Cape area, and the rest is in winter, which is all the rest of the country. So just prior to that, we go through our yellow card, and then we'll obviously get ready to be operational in those particular areas. We also engage in a number of fire awareness activities. For example, on the 27th of October in Knysna, we're having a big fire awareness campaign where we reach out into schools and communities where our firefighters actually educate the communities and students about, you know, fire prevention and being aware as to how to sort of deal with the threat of fires.
Is that what you do across the Western Cape in order to get them ready for the fire season?
It's across the Western Cape. We've got 30 teams, about 725 firefighters in the Western Cape alone. And that spreads from Crags, which is right on the border of Eastern Cape, through Swellendam, Riversdale, Tilbach to Cape Town, and then up, right up to Porterville up on the west coast. So they cross the whole of the Western Cape, and of course we have the other teams across the country.
Now, how important is preparedness and readiness for every eventuality, especially in the Western Cape where we see this happen every year?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, we've seen some fairly large and unexpected fires this year. The Knysna fire happened out of season, as did the Camps Bay fire season. So clearly we're seeing the impact of climate change. Our preparedness, as I said, has generally followed the seasonal pattern that we've become used to. But we also have backups in terms of teams from other parts of the country ready to deploy. So I think one of the advantages of this program is that not only do we have people who are locally based, but where needed, we ship in people from elsewhere. And in the Knysna fire, for the first time, the airlines actually volunteered to fly people down, which happened from Gauteng. We had people from Northwest, from Mpumalanga flying down to those fires in Knysna and in Tsitsikamma.
Now, the drought that we had in the Western Cape, did that exacerbate the situation, especially in Knysna and what happened in there?
Very definitely, because I think the undergrowth, very often you drive some of those areas, you see the lovely greenery, but below you have all the moribund material, the dryness, and that's what actually contributed to the kind of inferno we had in Knysna. The drought actually creates those conditions, which is really a tinderbox condition.
There was talks of people starting these fires deliberately. Any truth to that?
I think we've looked at some of the research conducted by CSIR, and they will be announcing, so I don't actually want to steal their thunder, but and excuse the pun, to a large extent the start of the fire was actually a lightning strike. Yeah.
Now, looking at preparedness, what sort of challenges are the firefighters find within the field when they do go out and they attempt to douse these fires?
We combat fires across quite a few different biomes. Forest, veld fires in the Free State Northwest, but the Cape is particularly challenging in the mountain terrain. So you have quite a big distance to go at times to get to the fire over difficult terrain. Obviously, we use our helicopters to troop our people into firefighting zones. So that is quite a challenge, I think one thing we have elicited was tremendous public outpouring of support in terms of donations, particularly fluids and high energy stuff. One of the things we do need to try and get around is to try and channel that into a structured manner so that we don't have mounds of donations in one area and another area which might be not in the view of the media, not being supported at all by the public.
Now, some would suggest that firefighters are merely perhaps just treating the symptom and not dealing with the actual symptom of the fires in terms of preparedness. What do you say to that?
No, I think, if you look at our activity, we practice integrated fire management. And part of that is a fuel load reduction. So out of the fire season, we are busy reducing the fuel load. We're doing fire breaks. We're burning off all the old stuff. So we actually do quite a bit of preventive activity besides the educational activity. So they've got a year-long program of activities which is as much preventative as much as responding reactive to the actual fire.
Now, we've seen a lot of damage with the fires, especially in Knysna, and of course loss of lives as well. How do you prepare the people in the communities for eventualities like this?
I think this is one of the challenges. I don't think the community has fully appreciated the risk in some cases, particularly the houses that are being put in this lovely rural settings, in Knysna forest. I've seen dwellings being put plunk in the middle of the forest, just a little clearing, with very little preparation. So part of our awareness, we also try and educate people to have a fire-safe environment around the house in concentric circles, expanding out. So there's certain vegetation you can actually plant that actually retards the spread of fire when it does come into that area.
How prepared is South Africa as a whole for any fire season and eventuality?
That's a very difficult question because I think, when you have situations like we've had prolonged drought in many areas, you have the kind of heat waves that we're getting now with wind, the kind of conflagration that we had in Knysna, it's not something you can prepare for. It's beyond what normal preparation would be. It's a disaster fire.
It's an act of God.
Well, disaster fire, there's a lot that can be done. I mean, we have alien vegetation, which is known to propagate fires very fiercely. So we need to remove that. So there's a lot of steps we can take. But we need to recognize also the kind of climatic conditions we start to experience are going to test us and push the parameters of what we can expect normally for a fire.
Now, how do we in South Africa perhaps juxtapose ourselves against other countries in the world when it comes to firefighting and preparedness?
Look, I think we've got a very proud record. I mean, if you look at what's just happened in California now, if you look at the fatalities there, the loss of houses, look at Portugal. Right now in Portugal, the Minister of Interior has resigned. Their president is actually asking for the government to resign because of preparedness. We have had a tremendously safe record in terms of our firefighters. We've only had one fatality on the fire line where someone has died due to burn in all the years. Yet when you look at all the reports overseas, many firefighters actually perish. Many civilians, the conflagration we had in Knysna, unfortunately, we had 5 fatalities. So that, by international standards, is very, very low. You know, so in some level we've been fortunate, but I think it's also a product of our preparation and our training with our firefighters. They are very well prepared to cope with the fire environment.
So South Africans can sleep a little bit easier?
I wouldn't say sleep easier. I think they do need to take notice of what needs to be done to improve our fire preparedness. But I think we compare very well with what's happening in the international community.
Sir, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here and giving us an update.
Thank you. Thank you.
That, of course, was Working on Fire's Managing Director, Trevor Abrams, here in studio with us. How prepared are you at home? That's another question. Take care of your environment. Let's now take a look at the newspapers from around the globe as we go to the United Kingdom, where the Independent reports that millions of pensioners could run out of money in retirement as they rush to cash in their pensions after underestimating how long they are likely to live. Millions of Britons facing pension problems there. Moving to New York, the Financial Times says that Qatar's sovereign wealth fund has brought more than 20 billion rand back on shore to cushion the impact of a regional embargo that was imposed on the Gulf state. And then finally in Australia, the Australian reports that China walks away from its long-standing human rights dialogue with Canberra as President Xi Jinping talks up a golden new era. There you have it. Those are all your newspapers from around the globe. Well, we are focusing on a poll today, and let's take a look where the polls stand at this point in time. The question is the Somalia massacre getting enough attention? We are asking you here in South Africa as well as the rest of the continent. So far, 189 votes in, 79% of you are saying no. It's not getting the attention it should, and that it does deserve. 21% are saying yes, it does. So let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle. Mahafa Noel says African people are captured. I don't think we are giving the Somalia attack enough attention. Hashtag Somalia attack. Sitsaba says no, Somalia need prayer in the whole world. Now remember, there's normally these hashtags that go around, pray for Somalia. It didn't make any impact on Twitter at all. And the question is, why? Well, we'll take a short break. We'll be back right after that.
Fashion influencers are diversifying the industry, leading a fashion revolution like never before.
It's time for us to come together now. What we face is the most significant moment in the history of this subcontinent.
Armstrong uses still with soft drawings and watercolors to create a disruption within the exhibition.
What you see in the show is almost like a snapshot of me as a being in process.
The band's so excited about their latest creation and believe it's their best work yet.
It's a happy album. It's got 8 tracks. First single, which is Nana in it, and Nana is pumping already.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
It's been 40 years since that fateful Black Wednesday. That's when the apartheid government embarked on a clampdown of press freedom. The South African National Editors Forum, SANEF, remembered the sacrifices that were made by those brave journalists at a media freedom fundraising gala dinner in Johannesburg and Cape Town last night.
1977's Black Wednesday, a dark day in the history of the media, when the apartheid government cracked down on journalists and independent press publications. SANEF Media Freedom Chairperson Sam Kokeli called on the integrity of public institutions to be preserved.
These are just examples of the kind of institutions that were created to protect democracy that have been domesticated. This is why it's important for the media to remain strong and to protect South Africa.
The use of fake news to discredit journalists to expose corruption was lamented.
The haters of democracy, of media freedom, we have seen them backed by deep pockets. We have seen those with deep pockets buying their souls to sell our constitution, our democracy for a song. This new war on journalism has seen an online assault by sophisticated Twitter bots attacking brave journalists who are telling the story of state capture.
And a call to preserve the integrity of the public broadcaster.
We must applaud the significant strides we have witnessed towards creating of an environment that will allow South African Broadcasting Corporation to execute its mandate as a public broadcaster, free from the clutches of the negative publicity and controversies around its administration.
The key message to all South Africans to jealously guard their hard-won democracy by preserving media freedom as the first line of defense against oppression and violence.
Now, media freedom, of course, media has moved on. As you know, today we communicate with you, you communicate with us. It's no longer a top-down approach. It's about social media and interacting with our audiences. And that's why we're asking you this question. Development at SAA, Dudu Myeni flew out of SAA as the chairperson, and we're asking you, what do you make of her departure as a chairperson from SAA? Let me take a look at some of your comments coming through on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. Tsili says, good riddance. I guess that the SAA shall start to be profitable now. Why is that the case? Why do we hang it on Dudu Myeni for the SAA not to be profitable? I'd like to hear her story. Now, Mahlamola says she is replaced by a pensioner, while the youth are sitting at home with degrees and talent. Her stay and departure are both a disgrace. Well, Mahlamola feel very strongly about that one. Tsaba says, Myeni looking for a big job here in South Africa. Well, lots of conspiracy theories as to where the former SAA chairperson might be going next. Well, so it was getting hot at SAA, but let's find out what the weather tells us, what it looks like in South Africa.
Well, a very good morning. You're watching Newsroom Weather. Let's take a look at what's happening. We are seeing clear skies over most of the central part of the continent of Africa. We're seeing Botswana with clear skies and with that very hot temperatures. Otherwise, in the southern parts, there's a cold front which is bringing some isolated to scattered showers, but more scattered in the Cape Town area. And in the afternoon, we are expecting some isolated showers here, just in places close to Mthatha in PE, eastern parts of PE, and parts of KZN for today. In the northern parts, we're expecting just isolated showers in the northern part of the central parts of the DRC. But tomorrow, we're expecting just a front moving east, with it expecting scattered to isolated showers in the eastern parts of the country. Now, this includes most of Gauteng, Mpumalanga province, and KwaZulu-Natal provinces. But of course, Limpopo is also included in that isolated shower percentage area. And looking at the southern coastline, only partly cloudy weather for the south with clear skies for the Northern Cape, and of course in Namibia into Zambia and Malawi. Once again, the DRC only isolated showers. Looking at your temperatures for the rest of the day, 16 for Springbok. It's still cool in Sutherland at 15 degrees, and just behind that cold front, seeing showers in Cape Town with a drop in temperature to 18 degrees, while PE is windy currently, and we're expecting it to stay windy for the first part of the day, but then it will come down later on. Those winds at about wind speeds are at about 55 kilometers per hour southwesterly in direction. Look at the interior, clear skies in Bloemfontein with a high of 27, and Pretoria very hot at 34 degrees. But in the northern parts, we're still seeing clear skies in most of Botswana. We're seeing high of 40 in Maun, while Windhoek is at 33. Those clear skies are only for the central parts. Along the coastal areas of Mozambique, we're expecting partly cloudy skies, as you can see in places places like Bere 28, Nampula at 39 degrees Celsius, very hot in that area, while clear skies once again in Madagascar, coming back with a high of 29 in Antananarivo. Moroni is peaking at 31, mostly clear. That's in those areas in the islands. Looking at the DRC, we're expecting just isolated showers in the northern parts, while Kinshasa, the capital city, remains mostly clear. Partly cloudy skies are expected for Kenya's interior, while the coastal areas, we see Mombasa peaking at 31, the interior is at 26 in Nairobi, while Juba has clear skies. Once in a while, we're seeing a high of 20 in that area. Coming towards the northern parts, we're expecting clear skies once again for Niger, Chad, and most of Mali, with those very hot temperatures continuing over the central parts of the country. Otherwise, isolated showers along the coastal areas, mostly for Ghana, Nigeria, and of course Cote d'Ivoire. But your temperatures in the north are looking like this. We've got Egypt with still clear skies once again, with the Cairo peaking at 32. A bit cooler weather is expected in Jerusalem with a high of 29, but here in Sudan we're still seeing those scorching temperatures, raising up temperatures to 39, and of course in Agadez then in Nigeria we're expecting still hot temperatures with high temperatures. And looking at what's happening in the western parts, we're still expecting just isolated showers. Remember, it's only for the coastal areas. The interior, most of these countries you can expect clear skies, and over the western parts we're seeing Dakar at 32 with the clear skies in that area. Well, that's it from the weather desk. Have yourself a lovely day.
The Pan-African Parliament, as a legislative body, could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
With the stories of abuse from the other 8, but they haven't been ready to pursue any angles. They've offered their support, they've offered the comfort to the 8, and it's been an amazing journey.
It feels like your heart actually literally sunk in your shoes.
It wasn't a long encounter. I think at the time I froze.
The way the criminal justice system deals with sexual violence is problematic. And I don't know, unless there's a fundamental change in many things, the way prosecutors deal with the victim in the matter.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Hello and a warm welcome to PM News, and we're broadcasting live from Johannesburg.
4 decades later, the family is still seeking closure.
We need the truth, and the truth must be told.
Children often go undiagnosed because they are hidden away. About 1 million people in South Africa live with autism.
Creative recycling at play.
Mosaic has been around forever. I just had to find a new, fresh way to put, and a new spin to put on it. So I decided, why not recycled cans?
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.
China and Africa, despite constant changes in the international situation, have always stood shoulder to shoulder, working together and supporting each other. In the 1950s and 1960s, national liberation movements swept Africa. The Chinese people, who had recently gained their own liberation, offered the African people full support in their just struggle against Western hegemony and colonialism. In 1956, China and Egypt announced they were establishing diplomatic relations. This made Egypt the first country in Africa to establish formal ties with the newly founded People's Republic. At the end of 1963 and the beginning of 1964, Premier Zhou Enlai undertook a tour of Africa, visiting 10 African countries in 2 months. During his trip, he set out 5 principles on which bilateral relations between China and the African and Arab countries should be founded. He also referred to 8 principles based on which China would provide economic and technical aid to other countries. His visit to Africa is still fondly remembered there today. On October the 25th, 1971, at the 26th United Nations General Assembly, the motion to restore the legitimate rights of the People's Republic of China at the UN was passed with an overwhelming majority. The announcement was greeted with enthusiastic cheering by the delegates of many African countries. Chairman Mao Zedong said, "Our African brothers carried China to its legitimate seat in the United Nations." Subsequently, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, China has always spoken out to uphold justice for the countries of Africa. It has also defended the common interests of the African and developing countries. The African countries' support for China has not only been political. When China has been in need, their support has also been economic. In 2008, in the wake of the devastating Wenchuan earthquake, China received over $10 million in donations from Africa. The president of Equatorial Guinea even dispatched his foreign minister with €1 million to help the victims. This represented a donation of over €1 from every man, woman and child in Equatorial Guinea. In 2011, after the earthquake in Yushu in Qinghai province, the Republic of Congo gave €2 million to rebuild the China-Congo Friendship Primary School. And in 2015, Equatorial Guinea donated $4.9 million for building the China-Equatorial Guinea Friendship Primary School in Jinping County in Yunnan Province. Thanks to careful tending by several generations of national leaders, the tree of China-Africa friendship continues to flourish. It has withstood the trials of the changing world and taken deep root among the people. Today, this tree is growing stronger. In the 21st century, the world faces a new situation and new challenges. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation was founded so that China and the countries of Africa could work and develop together. In November 2006, a China-Africa Cooperation Forum Summit was held in Beijing. The scope and level of mutual development would be expanded. The unity among the developing countries would be strengthened. South-South cooperation would be enhanced, and peace and development in the world would be promoted. The 16 years since the China-Africa Cooperation Forum was founded have been a period of significant achievement, when China and the countries of Africa have stepped up the comprehensive development of their relations. Between October 2000 and June 2016, senior Chinese leaders paid a total of 166 visits to Africa. The more frequent high-level exchanges and the deepening of mutual trust have created a powerful driving force for raising the level of China-Africa relations. Notably, China and the countries of Africa have closely cooperated to promote the reform of the international economic order and to implement the agenda for sustained development by the year 2030. They've also adopted a unified approach to dealing with problems such as climate change and to defending the interests of the developing countries.
Welcome back to the top of the hour, 10 o'clock here in the newsroom. Let's take a look at your news headlines. The Minister of Finance, Malusi Gigaba, has officially announced the appointment of 6 members of the board of South African Airways, as well as the full slate of non-executive board members to the airline. UMCOOP President Joseph Matunjwa says that he will seek the services of the private forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan to help police stop the continued killings of mine workers in the Platinum Belt. And President Jacob Zuma will today unveil a life-size statue of the late former ANC leader Oliver Reginald Tambo at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. Those are your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much, and good morning to you as well as to everybody at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Oh my goodness. That has gone.
AB de Villiers smashes a career best of 176 of 104 balls to set up a massive target for Bangladesh as Andile Petrugwayo blows them away with a 4-wicket haul.
Oh, that's it. That's the 4th wicket for Andile Petrugwayo.
Good bowling.
Orlando Pirates have lots of ground to cover ahead of the weekend's derby after being held to a 1-0 draw by bottom of the log Platinum Stars. And Eden Hazard's late equaliser snatches a 3-3 draw for Chelsea after the Blues had blown a 2-goal lead against Italian giants Roma.
And the header's right in the corner from Eden Hazard. It's 3-3.
All this, of course, in more detail we'll have for you around about 10:40. But for now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. As we know, the Moirani Commission investigating political killings in KZN in KwaZulu-Natal is underway in Durban. Let's go there live, where Zihle Zikalala for the ANC is testifying.
Affected because of the 2 reasons. Firstly, the ANC is a governing party, and therefore it has more politicians in government compared to all other parties involved. Secondly, because of its size and influence in the society, the ANC is found in all corners of the province. It is the majority, and therefore it will then be affected. Thus, anything that affects human beings in KwaZulu-Natal and South Africa is largely to affect the ANC because of its own majority within the populace of the country and the province. Therefore, it is inherent that the ANC will be mostly affected and smaller parties will be affected according to their size. Chairperson, we do not for a moment intend to be defensive. Our contribution solely aims to assist the work of the Commission of Inquiry, for which we have advocated for. The main thrust of our intention is neither to apportion blame on any other stakeholder or political player, nor to find easy scapegoat. Rather, our contribution is informed by putting matters in the historical perspective, recognizing the work already done in the past decade, and helping find lasting solution to the killings that plague our province. As we have said, we have called for this Commission of Inquiry to be established so we can collectively devise ways to save people's life. The pain is already too much to bear. The scars are too deep to close. It is eroding the fabric of our society. However, the power remains firmly in our collective efforts to stop these killings. We will take a brief look on the history of violence in South Africa, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. Chairperson, from the onset, we wish to issue a disclaimer in terms of the presentation we're making. Firstly, it is not our intention to be imposing and to dwell on the far-fetched history prior to the arrival of the settlers in this province. We are aware of the history of the conflict that existed in the preceding period with its inadequate, albeit broadly biased recording. We are, however, much more alive to the 19th century resistance by Africans, which was marked by, among others, the gallant battle, which include the Battle of Isandlwana of the 22nd January 1879. Of critical importance is that we believe that it is fundamentally the institutionalized culture of violence that was planted since the arrival of the settler colonialist that we live to bear the brunt of today. For this reason, we will make an effort to highlight episodes of violence that demonstrate how this culture was systematically established and ingrained in the life of our nation. It is our considered view, Chairperson, that this culture was established to aid the colonial imperialist project, which has robbed the blacks' majority of their socio-economic right in the land of their birth. Our approach is to let recorded facts speak for themselves as we depend on writers of the modern day history and on our struggle heroes and heroines who lived through pain, hardship, and sufferings of the apartheid colonialism. Chairperson, our country has a long history of violence that gained ground in the 19th century. It peaked in the early 19th century following the introduction of the tax laws. The introduction of one-pound poll tax by colonial authorities in the then Natal, according to the historian, triggered uprisings and forms of resistance by African communities in the Midland areas.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Zigalala. I noticed that you are reading from a prepared submission or statement. Mr. Manyati, wouldn't it be useful or helpful to the Commission if we were to have access to the statement so that we can follow it as Mr. Zigalala is reading it, instead of having to write out everything that he is saying?
I'll clarify with Mr. Zigalala. Mr. Zigalala, is the ANC willing to give a hard copy to the Commission?
Yes, we are, and we will provide copies right now.
Chairperson, I propose that we take a short, perhaps a 10-minute break. It might, I don't know whether there are sufficient copies, but it might entail making copies.
We do have. We do have prepared copies which we believe will be sufficient for the Commission.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. We appreciate that.
Thanks. Thank you. Are we in a position to proceed?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are making copies. They are making more copies.
For easy reference, I will start in page 4, number 10, paragraph 10 there.
Proceed.
Thank you. Chairperson, our country has a long history of violence that gained ground in the 19th century. It peaked in the early 20th century following the introduction of the tax laws. Most of notable uprising during the reign of His Majesty, King Dinizulu Kakechwayo, was led by Inkosi Bambata Kamancinza Zondi of Amazondi clan and Inkosi Sikananda Shezi of the Amangube clan in 1906. The longest surviving president of the ANC, whose life we celebrate this year and would have turned 100 years on the 27th of October 2017, the late Oliver Tambo captured this past in an interview in New York where in 1966, where he said, and I quote, "Before they were finally defeated and subjugated by sheer force of superior arms, our forefathers had been engaged in many bitter struggles against the white foreign investors and colonial conquerors, both Boer and British. With spears and battle axes, their only weapons, and with shield, their sole means of protection against bullets. African...
Sorry, just to correct, you read as investors. Should it be invaders?
Sorry, invaders.
So it's a Freudian slip.
Invaders, I'm sorry. And colonial conquerors. The Boer and British, with spears and battle axes, their only weapon, with shield, their only sole means of protection against bullets. Africans fought grimly in defense of their land and their national independence. The armed struggle was carried on intermittently for 127 years. In the end, however, the Africans were defeated, totally disarmed, and then shepherded into what are known as reserves, usually in the poorest parts of the country, close quote. We bring this quotation partly to emphasize the historical background of violence, especially as a means to suppress democracy and perpetuate oppression against the Africans in general. These uprisings were against the new form of oppression signified by the introduction of tax laws. The tax laws evidently sought to displace African males from their communities and forcing them to go to work in the gold and diamond mines in Johannesburg and Kimberley, respectively, as well as in the farms in Natal. During these uprisings, an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 African men are believed to have died from the fire of the machine gun and cannon of the colonial soldiers. Inkosi Pambata was captured and beheaded. The elderly, then at 95 years old, Inkosi Skananda was also captured and is said to have died a few days later. His Majesty the King Dinuzulu was also arrested and sentenced to 4 years imprisonment for treason, for the second time having first served a prison sentence on St. Helena Island in 1889. The Natal colonial government's persecution of the King Dinuzulu over the Pambata rebellion, leading to his conviction on the 3rd of March 1909, angered Africans. Giving account of this, Dr. Bongani Ngulunga, in the recently released biography of Philsika Isaka Seme, the founder and the former president of the ANC, says, and I quote, "Dinuzulu's conviction, sentence, and imprisonment greatly distressed black people across the length and breadth of what became the Union of South Africa in 1910. Most affected, of course, were black people in KwaZulu and Natal, the vast majority of whom regarded him as their king, even though the Natal colonial authorities had reduced his status to that of a mere chief. Leading a chorus of protest against the persecution of King Dinuzulu was John Langalibalele Dube, who used the pages of his newspaper, Ilanga Lase-Natal, to chronicle the injustice melted out by the authorities against Dinuzulu, close quote. It is President Thabo again who captured the foundation of the ANC as an organization of peaceful resistance. And I quote former President Thabo as saying, "At the time of the formation of the ANC, there was no question of the rallying on armed force as a means of struggle. Only 10 or so years previously, the Boers had tried that method against the British and failed. Pambata had resorted to arms in 1906 and also failed. Deputations, petitions, demonstration and conference resolutions were the order of the day. Besides, Africans had been forcibly disarmed. The ANC, therefore, led the people into essentially peaceful and non-violent form of action," close quote. What is clear from this narrative,
and what we're going to be doing here is the unveiling of the bust of President Thabo, and also opening the auditorium that we've named after our Thabo. So I'll request the President to unveil the bust by pulling from behind.
By pulling it from behind.
Mr. President, I'll then request the Minister of Transport to read the plan.
Thanks, President, Ministers, Thabo family, our veteran, Ndadem Lange. The Aviation Training Academy, or Thabo Auditorium, was officially opened by His Excellency President Jacob Zuma on 19 October 2017.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next thing, Honorable President, Excellency, is the unveiling of the name of the auditorium, which is just behind me. Should we just pull it down? The document down?
Just pull it. Pull it a bit high. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're done?
Yes. That concludes the event for here, and we are going to be now moving across to where we're going to be.
Chris wants to bless it for 1 minute. Chris wants to bless it for 1 minute. Yes. It's okay?
I'll allow the
Guys, we are moving outside. You can start moving. Eh? Bless it.
Well, there you have the president unveiling the bust of O.R. Tambo, as well as the O.R. Tambo Auditorium. Just behind him there, as you can see, the Tambo family also joining in, of course, celebrating that now. They will be moving to the main section of the international arrivals, where the main statue will be unveiled shortly, and we will definitely go back there to find out what's the latest. There you see the plaque there, the Aviation Authority or Training Academy O.R. Tambo Auditorium, officially sponsored by His Excellency President Jacob Zuma on that particular date. And of course, as you can see there, there's some prayers now on the bust of Oliver Reginald Tambo.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We'll do as we'll leave now here, and we'll come back a little bit later to the unveiling of the official statue in the international arrivals, and we'll go back there. Let's now move back to where we were a little bit earlier at the Moirani Commission of Inquiry into
officially unveiled
all the killings in KZN.
And as you remember that O.R. Tambo is named after this giant, and then we've also seen the auditorium being unveiled, also bearing the name of Oliver Reginald Tambo.
There you have it. That's the celebration of O.R. Tambo. We'll go to the official unveiling of the statue in the international arena a little bit later. We'll go back to O.R. Tambo Airport. But right now, let's go back to the Moirani Commission investigating political killings in KZN.
Between the Zulus and Indian, close quote. Chair and the Commission were bringing this quotation to emphasize that in a number of instances, the apartheid regime was at the center of propagating the violence against black as a black-on-black violence, as we will later narrate when we come to the events of the 80s. But before that, Chair, let me reflect briefly on the period between 1970s and 1980s. The murder of the anti-apartheid activist and a lawyer who operated from here in Durban and represented ANC political activist Mr. Mlungisi Griffiths Mxenge is another case in point. He was assassinated by 4 Flag Plus Askari members. He had been abducted, stabbed, and hammered to death, and his mutilated body was found next to the Umlazi Stadium. The same fate befell his wife, Victoria Nonyamezelo Mxenge, who was also murdered in August 1985 by 4 men who attacked her on the driveway of her home in Umlazi. This was within weeks after she had addressed some 50,000 mourners at the funeral of activist Matthew Goniwe, 4th Calata, Sparrow Mkhonto, and Stelo Mhlawuli, who were known as the Craddock Four, who were assassinated by the security police. Chairperson, the history of violence in our country was deliberately institutionalized by the apartheid state and ingrained in our people's consciousness for decades through methods that instilled fear and destroyed people's dignity and self-respect in certain instances. It was further reinforced through a barrage of oppressive policies that were aimed at ravaging the fabric of our society and to systematically annihilate our culture and sense of being, erasing our dignity and pride. It stands to reason that all these well-documented incidents and overwhelming evidence of apartheid state-initiated and sponsored violence, which was later confirmed by a series of commissions, contributed to the radicalization of black people. As a form of resistance, they became armed and faced the apartheid onslaught head-on. The pre- and post-1994 history of violence in KwaZulu-Natal. The recent history of violence in KwaZulu-Natal is also well documented. In fact, a number of commissions, including the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act number 34 of 1995, which is known as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, followed by the Commission of Inquiry regarding the Prevention of Public Violence and Intimidation Act number 139 of 1991, which was known as the Goldstein Commission, and the Detroit investigation in the trust feed in December 1988, and Kwamakuta massacre of 1987, have all captured quite at length the sources, the character, the players, and indeed the victims of violence over the last 3 decades prior to and post the democratic dispensation. These commissions prove beyond doubt the role of the apartheid state in fostering black-on-black violence, a culture that continues to be well entrenched till this day. For an example, the rivalry between the ANC and the IFP, on the rival between the ANC and the IFP, the Goldstein Commission, in its final report on attacks on members of the South African police, released on the 27th of October 1994, the Commission found that after examining a large portion of 140 cases, it says, and I quote, it could not find evidence linking members of the ANC and MK to the murders of the IFP, close quote. Nor could it find evidence to support the allegation of systematic policy by the ANC and MK to murder leaders of the IFP. Even in its interim report covering the period between the 1st of October 1992 and the 30th of September 1993, the Commission noted in Section 80.1 and 80.2 as follows, and I quote, recently, there were numerous killings at Bambayi squatter settlement near Durban. The IFP launched its branch and its supporters were allegedly attacked by ANC supporters. Mr. Ed Tillett of the IFP Information Center made a press statement stating that outsiders were brought into the area and members of the Transkei Defense Force and the ANC's military wing, MK, were responsible for mounting the attack and that the disruption was planned in advance. The IFP believe that the identification and place of residence of those who died in the ensuing clash would assist the Commission in its inquiry. The Natal unit visited mortuaries and established the identities of the dead, and also found that some of the bodies had not been identified. The information was followed up, but the unit could not find evidence to support Mr. Tillet's allegation. The previously unidentified were later identified by means of fingerprints, and their homes were also visited, only to find that all the deceased originated from the Pambai area. Section 88.2 continues to say, and I quote, on the 9th of February 1993, Mr. John Jeffries of the firm of attorneys Chatley, Thompson, and Hasten in Pietermaritzburg handed 2 statements to the Natal unit alleging that a certain chief was implicated in killings in the Ikopo area. Members of the unit interviewed all the people mentioned by witnesses, but no support was found for the allegation made. Now, close quote. Now, we are making this reference to point to the fact that there have been a number of allegations made by political parties in various commissions, but there have been clear findings in that regard. The Goldstein Commission further noted in terms of the attacks on members of the South African police the following, and I quote, reasons for violence on the police are multi-faced, but the root cause are to be found in the political history of the country. Members of the SAP who were victims of violence and members of the community gave evidence that the police officers are subjected to mistrust and hatred, especially in black communities. The causes are to be found in the historic role that the police played in the enforcement of apartheid legislation. The manner in which this was done met with strong objection. This enmity of the community toward the police made law enforcement in unrest situation very difficult, close quote. Chairperson, this further defines the relationship that existed between the police and the communities at that time. The Commission also received evidence that spoke to volumes on the role of the SAP, the KwaZulu Police, and the IFP, particularly the role played by the Unit C at Flag Plus, later Unit C10, Unit C1 at Flag Plus, later Unit C10, under the command of Colonel Eugene de Kock. This unit delivered arms to IFP leaders in the then Transvaal, and it was named that they were delivered to Mr. Themba Khoza and Mr. Victor Ndlovu as part of its program of perpetrating violence that sought to destabilize South Africa. In the late 1980s to the mid-1990s, the same strategy was used to foment violence in KwaZulu-Natal, especially in the Hammersdale areas, and testimonies in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission subsequently proved that. The latter testimonies went into detail on the role played by those who had been trained in Caprivi during the violence in Natal, particularly in the Pietermaritzburg region. A report by Africa Watch on the violence in Natal stated as follows, and I quote, a statement by Brigadier Jacques Buchner, the head of security forces in Pietermaritzburg region during 1987 to 88 outbreak of violence, reflect clearly the security force bias in Natal. We intervene, and in this regard, Africa Watch quotes direct Brigadier Buchner, and he said, "We intervene to restore law and order and to restore the rightful authority of the chiefs and Izinduna, the legal representatives of KwaZulu government," close quote. It will be remembered, Chairperson, that if you refer by that time to the legal representatives of KwaZulu government, you will be referring to those who were members of the then KwaZulu legislature, who almost all of them were members of the IFP. This report further continued to say, and I quote, "The 8 areas of Natal examined in this report reveal a consistent pattern of security force complicity with IFP, with Inkatha. According to direct eyewitness testimony, monitors report, sworn affidavit, court orders, and press reports. The SAP, ZPs, kids constables, and SANDF have all been guilty of bias in the violence, either by transporting and accompanying Inkatha on offensives or standing idly during attacks. Inkatha supporters were recruited into auxiliary Kickstock stable force. The UDF, on the other side, was regarded by police as an extremist organization. To Africa Watch knowledge, no evidence exists that police have ever aided UDF during an Inkatha attack. Residents pleaded for police protection from Inkatha to no avail in 1990 in KwaMakhutha and Ndwedwe, where ZP shot and killed or injured residents. In Entseleni in 1990, police disarmed UDF supporters known as comrades at Inkatha's request. Yet in Kaluza near Pietermaritzburg, in Mpumalanga, KwaMakhutha, and in Entseleni in 1989 and in 1990, police not only refused to disarm Inkatha, but chased and attacked UDF supporters with tear gas and guns when they attempted to defend themselves, close quotes. We're bringing this information, documented as such, again to firstly demonstrate in front of this commission the role played by the police at that time, the development of mistrust between the police and communities. But also we want at this stage to clearly dispel a notion that it was the ANC that was responsible for the killing of the IFP leaders. There have been commissions that went through and investigated all of these issues, and there is no such allegation that has ever been proven. Chairperson, we are reminding your commission and the people of this province and the country of a well-documented history of violence in KwaZulu-Natal, in order for all of us not to lose sight of the fact which came out of a number of investigations and commissions. We are mindful of the pain this might cause to the families of the victim. However, it is absolutely critical that the institutionalization of violence against the ANC and other liberation movement, and indeed the majority of the people of this country, be understood comprehensively. It is also very critical that the explicit role played by the state security forces or its branches as part of divide and rule strategy be internalized to avoid the altering of fact or cases of selective memory. To this end, anyone who would seek to manufacture a new narrative on this sordid history of violence, particularly in this province, must correctly be viewed with suspicion for their dishonor. As we have stated in our introduction, many lives were lost in the past, and they continue to be lost to this day. And we believe this is wrong, unjust, and rob our people of their right to life. It also robs our people of privilege to enjoy the fruits of our hard-won freedom, which was attained through sacrifice, sweat, and blood. This practice also permeated the entire criminal justice system of the apartheid colonial state apparatus. The police were largely the obvious, crude, and pragmatic manifestation of violence unleashed on the people by the apartheid colonial government. It was in the persecution of these apparent, horrific, and inhumane acts of violence that the phenomenon of the third force came about and was to be subsequently unraveled in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Goldstein Commission. There were many security forces who served the apartheid regime and the Bantustan government, including the army, who were trained precisely to fight the liberation movements. Some were indeed black security personnel who were trained by and reported to white generals. This is also critical to note because it touches on the possible failures within the police establishment to deal with some of the cases of violence we see even today. Through the courts, a significant number of ANC cadres and other liberation movements were executed, imprisoned, and eliminated through extrajudicial and nefarious means. Young ANC cadres who bear the brunt of the apartheid colonial state in the then Natal, among others, include Comrade Andrew Zondo, Mashayina Kulu, and Lucky Pai. Increasingly, all forms of people's resistance to the structural and institutionalized violence was met with intensified repression and military patrol by state, possible to maintain law and order. It was fashionable in those days to see Caspars and Inyalas patrolling township with heavily armed military personnel, mostly young Afrikaner nationals. In their security roadmap, the maintenance of law and order was constrained around African township, then in the Indian and colored township, and certainly they were not to be found. And certainly they were not to be found in white suburbs. So these big hippos, Caspars, and Inyala were only used in these areas, particularly the townships and rural areas dominated by Africans, to a certain extent Indians, and then the coloreds. These state-sponsored forms of violence were meant to, and to a greater extent, succeeded in instilling fear among African communities. African communities were daily traumatized by the ever-present existence of the military in their midst, as well as significant number of attacks on unarmed civilians and young African males in particular, which were always reported. It is against this backdrop that African communities resorted to various means of protecting themselves against the unprovoked aggression from the apartheid regime. This response generated new waves of violence and entrenched the culture of violence in black communities. The other frontier of dominating the African majority, which reinforced the culture of violence, was the introduction of highly toxic drugs in the townships. This was coupled with the infiltration of firearms. Over time, the dangerous liaisons of drugs and guns produced a new subculture of gangsterism rooted in violence. This, in turn, complemented the apartheid regime grand strategy of denigrating black life and reducing black people into subhuman standard. The phrase, "black life is cheap," thus emerged. From the above brief narration of our sad past, the ANC wished to submit to this commission that the apartheid colonialism has left our country, and certainly more so KwaZulu-Natal, a sad culture of violence. And we have demonstrated throughout on how the culture of violence emerged in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Maybe to fast track, the ANC's commitment to peace and stability in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. As the ANC, we have always been gravely concerned about the violence, and as such has been an active initiator and facilitator, as well as a key participant in the peace-building processes in this province. The ANC's track record in building peace in the province and in the country at large and throughout Africa is also well recorded. The track record is traceable from its formation in 1912. It is supported by the posture of the ANC's non-violent struggle, as has been articulated, with the highlight on the deputations to Britain that took place between 1914 to 1930s. It is also evidenced by the President General, Chief Albert Luthuli's recognition through the award of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1961. President Luthuli, of course, accepted the award with grace, yet the irony of the non-violent struggle in the face of brutal oppression was not lost in his weight, as he said, and I quote, "For my part, I'm deeply conscious of the added responsibility which this..."
Well, it's a very good morning to you once again, and thank you so much for joining us here on SABC News Channel 404 for this special broadcast. We're still coming to you live from the OR Tambo International Airport in Ekurhuleni in Gauteng province. We're here, of course, this morning for the official unveiling of the statue of the late struggle icon, stalwart of the African National Congress, the first ever president of the African National Congress to serve for many years, Oliver Reginald Tambo. So what you see currently now on your screen, President Jacob Zuma has just arrived at the international arrival section here at OR Tambo for the official unveiling of the statue. And previously, just a few minutes ago, he was on the other side of the airport at the Air Traffic and Navigation Services, ATNS, for the official unveiling of OR's bust. And of course, there's an auditorium that was also being renamed after him. So now, as you can see, there is the Minister of Transport, Joe Maswanganyi, because this event is entirely their project, and we're also seeing the Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Khatebe, who is also the chairperson of the Interministerial Committee responsible for the centenary celebrations of OR Tambo. President Jacob Zuma is there, and a few minutes ago when they were on the other side, we've also seen that the chairperson of the Integrity Committee of the African National Congress, Ndate Indru Mlangeni, was also there at talking to the president, of course, and observing the processions that were taking place that side. So there is the president waiting, of course, to unveil this life-size statue, approximately 2.5 meters high. And what I can also tell you is that there is huge media contingency. The journalists from the different media houses are also here present to come and see what is happening. President Jacob Zuma there waving to everyone, because it's not just the journalists who are here, but all the South Africans are also here in their huge numbers. We're seeing tourists who are also coming in. They're also here to observe this prestigious moment. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Maitengwana Mashabane, is also present here. From where I am standing, I can also see the Executive Mayor of Ekurhuleni, Mzwandile Masina, is also here. There is Ndate Ndrumlangeni, who's one of the ANC's stalwart and the chairperson of the ANC's Integrity Committee. He is also present at this event. So any moment from now, President Jacob Zuma is expected to officially open this stage. You'd also recall that this is just part of the celebrations that have been prepared for by the government of South Africa, as 2017 has been declared the year of OR Tambo. Next week it's the big day on the 27th when OR Tambo would have turned 100 years. So there will be celebrations taking place at Nkandolo, that's his hometown, of course, in the Eastern Cape, to celebrate this important milestone, of course, in the history of South Africa. And this morning, during our sister morning program, Morning Live, we had a conversation with AXA's CEO, Bongani Maseko, who was basically telling us about the significance of the erection of the statue here at the airport, remembering that back in 2006, the airport was renamed after OR Tambo by the former president, Thabo Mbeki. So basically they sort of taking forward his legacy and the importance of the statue being here at the international departure is for tourists and all the visitors who come in. They will be able to see the statue. They'll be able to learn more about South Africa's history and, most importantly, about the life of OR Tambo. We were also fortunate to have a conversation with the firstborn of Oliver Tambo, Sister Mbi Tambo, who was basically saying that they're very much honored by as the family by what the government of South Africa is doing in terms of taking forward the legacy of their father. So, as you can see now, there is the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Maitengwana Mashabane, Minister Joe Maswanganye, Transport Minister, Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Khatebe, having a final word with the President of the Republic of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, now as they will be unveiling. Look at the audience on your screen. Exactly what I was telling you earlier on, that we got here just before 5 o'clock and it was already busy. It's one of the busiest airports, not just here in South Africa, but most importantly in the African continent. So there are people coming in and out, but most importantly, there are South Africans who are here in their huge numbers to come and observe this prestigious event that is about to take place here this morning. So we're just waiting on President Jacob Zuma to officially unveil. From here, the president will be expected to deliver his keynote address to talk a little bit about OR Tambo, that according to the program that I have with me now, that is supposed to happen just after 12 o'clock. So that's basically what is currently happening now and what is currently what you're currently seeing now on your screen. So the moment now is just to wait for the president to officially unveil that 2.5 meters high life-size statue of our struggle icon, Ubab Oliver Reginald Tambo. We've also seen the Tambo family. They here, as I said, we had a conversation earlier with Usis Tembi, who's also the South African ambassador to Italy, who's here for the whole month, for the birth month of OR Tambo, to come and celebrate the birthday of their father. We've seen Ubab Dali Tambo as well at the Airport Traffic and Navigation Services, where Ndate Oliver Tambo's bust was also officially unveiled here this morning. So there are few announcements that are just being made now. From there on, we believe that the president will then proceed in terms of officially unveiling that stage. You know that Oliver Tambo was not just a struggle icon and a hero to us South Africans, but he was to the rest of the world. He was a father and a husband, of course, and they were blessed with Adelaide Tambo with 3 children. They went to exile and then they came back to South Africa in 1990, and that's when he handed over the baton to our former President, Dr. Nelson Mandela. Of course, after that, he was elected the ANC chairperson during Dr. Mandela's time. So, from where we're standing now, we are just waiting for the president to carry out the processions. And I'm also seeing the Treasurer General of the African National Congress now, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, having a chat with Ndade Andrew Mlangeni, who is an ANC stalwart and also the chairperson of the ANC's Integrity Committee. So, according to the government's communications department, around 200 guests have been invited to this unveiling of Oliver Tambo's statue. This morning, of course, them including the Tambo family, the transport ministry responsible for the event here today, other government officials as well. They are also here, the different ministers from the different departments. I've seen some that I've already mentioned. They all here in their huge numbers as part of the centenary celebrations. About a day or two ago, President Jacob Zuma was in Limpopo, of course, officially opening one of the bridges in that province that were named or that are named after O.R. Tambo. So next week on the 27th, on his birthday, all roads will be leading to the Eastern Cape province and Nkandolo for the official celebrations of O.R. Tambo. So many of you would also remember, if you look back at the history, that O.R. Tambo was one of the longest serving presidents of the African National Congress. That, of course, it happened between 1969 and 1991, and he was sent overseas by the ANC to go and mobilize and assist in terms of fighting the apartheid regime back then. And then he returned back here home in 1990, and unfortunately he passed on in 1993, which was about 2 to 3 weeks after the assassination of one of the SACP leaders, Chris Hani. So many people, of course, on the other hand, saying that O.R. Tambo is like Moses from the Bible. He actually led his people to the promised land, but was never able to enjoy the fruits of his toil. All right, look at the number of people on your screen that are present here. It's not just people who are going to fly out or those who have just landed, but it's ordinary South Africans who are here in their huge numbers, of course, wanting to observe this important moment. We are just waiting now as it is. There are a few announcements that are being made here by the officials that are responsible for the ceremony here. From now on, from there on, and then President Jacob Zuma will officially open O.R. Tambo statue here where we're standing, and he is accompanied by a number of ministers, as I said, from the different departments. We're seeing ANC officials as well, the likes of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, ANC Treasurer General. He's also present here. We're seeing Kuruleni Meya Mzwandile Masina is here, and many other dignitaries that are present here. So from here, we also expecting remarks on behalf of the Tambo family, and Dali Tambo will be carrying that out. There will also be a singing of the national anthem, and then President Jacob Zuma will address the nation, of course, and that would then wrap officially the program of today. We also had an opportunity to speak to the minister in the presidency this morning, who is also the chairperson of the interministerial committee responsible for the centenary celebrations of O.R. Tambo. Jeff Khatebu was basically saying they're very much happy as the South African government as to how things have gone from the beginning of this year, when the government officially declared 2017 the year of O.R. Tambo, and with just a few months left, they're still happy to see the participation of the ordinary South Africans who are interested in learning more about the times, of course, and the life of the late O.R. Tambo, who was also a lawyer by profession. You remember that back in 1951 he formed the first black law partnership with the late Dr. Nelson Mandela, and during those years really he was also arrested for treason with other 156 people, but when he was released on bail he then married his late wife Adelaide Tambo. That was back in 1956, and 1958 he became the deputy president of the African National Congress. All right, let's just take you down there and listen in as to how things are proceeding, because as I said, you can see there's President Jacob Zuma there, ready of course to take on the proceedings and officially open that statue of the late O.R. Tambo. You'd recall that then back, if I take you back a little bit on the history of O.R. Tambo, that in 1967 he became the ANC president after the death of Chief Albert Lutuli. He was the acting president then, but then he then got onto that position on a permanent basis. In 1982, O.R. Tambo suffered a mild stroke, and that of course was due to his tiring schedule, as busy as he was trying to mobilize the support abroad for the African National Congress in fighting the apartheid regime. But in 1989, he then had a more severe stroke that forced him to take time off. And then in 1990, O.R. Tambo and his family returned back to South Africa after 30 years in exile. That is when he passed the baton on to President Nelson Mandela, and then he was elected the national chairperson of the African National Congress. It looks like things are set now. Let us just take a look and listen. President Jacob Zuma officially unveiling the statue of the late O.R. Tambo.
She has to be here. Can you find out where too specific about this thing? When is Julia? I'm just waiting. He's with the
Today's Tambo's son, Dali Tambo. It looks like there's got to be some final touches on the proceedings, because everything looks ready now. We are about to go live. We are live, in fact, but we're just about to, hand over to them for the official proceedings to begin. Yes, if you've just tuned in, we're still coming to you live from the O.R. Tambo International Airport here in Ekurhuleni for the official unveiling of the life-size statue of the late ANC struggle stalwart, O.R. Tambo. So what I see now, there's a contingency of spiritual leaders that are coming in. I see priests walking in. There's the firstborn of O.R. Tambo, Usis Tembi Tambo, also walking in. So it looks like the family is only arriving now. And hopefully now that everyone is here, the proceedings will start. All right, let's just take a look and listen.
Yeah, if you can.
Oh, Ashkana.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How are you today?
Fine.
Good. Let's see again.
Hello, Timber. Very well.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Zuma, my cabinet colleague, the Minister of Transport, and other cabinet colleagues present here, the Tambo family, you are most welcome, and all the people of the media. The program will just be a short one. The President will be unveiling the statue of our icon, President Oliver Tambo, and shortly after that, the Minister of Transport will read the plaque, and after that there will be a photo opportunity, after which we all go to the marquee to listen to the President speaking on this very auspicious occasion. Without any further ado, I'll request the President and the Thabo family, represented by Oliver, to unveil the plaque. The rail icon. The Minister of Transport will now proceed to read the plaque.
Thank you, President, Ministers, the Thabo family. The plaque reads thus: Oliver Reginald Kaizana Thabo, 100 years, 1917 to 2017. This sculpture of Oliver Thabo, the ANC's longest-serving president and leader in exile, was officially unveiled by the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency, President Jacob Zuma, on the 19th October 2017 in his centenary year, in honor of Thambo's extensive travels in the service of his people. Then there are artists Zelda Stroud, Hauchel Mashiko, Pabalo Majela, the Foundry Sculpture Casting Services. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll just have a short prayer to bless the statue.
Let us pray. Once again, God, we give you thanks that you gave us wisdom. We thank you for the life of Oliver Reginald Thabo, who fought for justice and righteousness, who served your people with compassion and love. And as we unveil this statue, we bless it in the name of God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, as we bless it in remembrance of Oliver Reginald Thabo. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Tim? We must take a picture next to you.
Okay, well, there you are, Kushingo Magemanje. As you can see, the life-size statue of the late struggle stalwart Oliver Reginald Tambo has officially been unveiled by President Jacob Zuma at what has been described by the minister and the presidency as a very short program. Indeed, it was, because it was just a short prayer, of course, to bless the statue. And, of course, the Minister of Transport, Joe Maswanganyi, reading the plaque, and a very short message really on the plaque, which just talks to the centenary celebrations, the 100 years that Oliver Tambo is turning this year, of course, and saying that it was officially opened by the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Jacob Zuma. President Jacob Zuma there holding hands with the children of Oliver Tambo. I see Sister Mbi Tambo there and Dali Tambo are also there. So from here, the formal proceedings will lead to the marquee. That is where President Jacob Zuma will officially address the nation on this important event celebrating the life and times of Oliver Reginald Tambo. So that is about it here from where the statue is unveiled. And as I said, and as Minister Jeff Khatebe has also said, that from here, President Jacob Zuma will be delivering the much anticipated speech, of course, that talks to the life and times of Oliver Reginald Tambo. There is the statue on your screen. Oliver Tambo raising his left hand, greeting on all the tourists and visitors who will be making their way into the airport after landing, and holding his briefcase, of course, that bears the message about the centenary celebrations, of course, that are currently taking place here in South Africa as part of government's initiative to celebrate and honor his life. Really, now what is happening on your screen, it's just an opportunity for a photo session. That is currently what is taking place. From there, we'll be taking you to the marquee, and I know that my colleague Mzwandile Mbesha, the presidential correspondent, is also here, and he'll be also, taking over from me and giving you things on the events as they unfold, and the president's speech most importantly. But for now, Elvis, let me just hand back to you in studio. As soon as the president begins with the speech, the other side of the airport will be coming to you.
Thank you, Police, coming to us live from OR Tambo from that unveiling there. Now, remember that here in Johannesburg, in Parktown, currently the Isidimeni arbitration is underway. Let's go there live.
Into the organization a number of times, even when we were having patients already. And I remember when
Who physically brought the patients to you?
The patients were physically brought by the sisters of the hospital, CCRC. I think one of them was Sister Mguni, and the matron of the CCRC at that time, Sister Masejo. And
Sister who?
Masejo.
Masejo.
Yes. And the first batch of patients, when we received the patient for the first time, Ms. Nyatu was there as well.
And why did you think, by what authority were you entitled to look after these patients?
At the time, I thought...
I'm not talking about a license or something.
Yeah.
Some official who said, you are the authorized person to take care of the lives of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that? Okay, I can change the question.
Okay,
why did you think you were acting lawfully by receiving the patients? Who gave these people and placed them under your care? By what authority?
I don't know if I can answer that, Judge.
Why did you think you had the right or duty to look after the patients?
I wouldn't say it was a right. I thought the duty part of it, thank you for putting it that way, the duty part of it, I thought that I was helping, And because I'm a community worker, I chip in, and that might not be taken as something that I was supposed to do. And right now, I'm really thinking that I was not supposed to do that. Justice.
It stands to reason there was no, I mean, if there was no contract, there was no open tender. You didn't respond to an open tender.
No.
But on your understanding, you were providing services on behalf of the state?
On my understanding, yes.
To mental health care users?
Yes, Council.
And those mental health care users were dependent on the state?
Yes, Council.
Were you aware of the constitutional rights of the mental health care users under your care?
Yes, I was.
What were those rights?
I would think a right for proper care, right for food, proper diet and protection.
And anything else?
Nothing else comes to mind now, Council. Sorry.
So you're aware of the obligations you had to respect the rights of the mental health care users and to protect the rights of the mental health care users under your care as Siyabadinga CEO?
Yes, Council.
But you're not fully aware of all of the rights they're entitled to in the Constitution, isn't that true?
At this time, no, Council.
You weren't aware then and you're not aware now, isn't that true?
No, Council.
Do you think that in the end you respected or protected the rights of the mental health care users?
I think I did respect their rights because...
but you just said you didn't know what their rights were.
To be loved, that we gave. We had passion. I had a community health workers or the staff that had so much passion to help the mental patients, and we gave them so much love.
But they couldn't survive on love and fresh air.
But there was food. Yes, they couldn't. But we did provide food. We did provide a comfortable place. The most important thing that we did not provide was having a qualified staff, which I regret now, Council.
Those are my questions, Justice Masani.
Thank you, Council.
Have the police been to you?
Yes, Council.
Have the police come
Justice.
to you requiring warning statements from you?
Yes, I've been busy with them throughout the past week.
Now only, the past week?
Yes, Justice.
What did they require from you?
They required the documents such as the NPO certificate, the certificate, the license. They requested the death reports of the patients that passed away. What else did they?
What death reports did you have in your possession?
It was for the four mental health users, which was Sifuka Rifilwe, Mhlongo Jabulani, Tian Kroos, and Jan Daneke.
Did any of them undergo post-mortem examination after they passed on?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, Justice.
What did you do with their bodies once they passed on in your facility?
We had two of them that did not have family. We did not have contact of family or of any sort. Then we called the Cullinan police department and we explained what happened, and they took the bodies to the mortuary, the state mortuary.
And do you know where the bodies are of the 2 mental health care users?
They were taken
whose
in
families you did not have?
They were taken to the Bronkhorstspruit mortuary.
Did you contact any of the family members to tell them about?
We did not have any records of them. We tried. We went even to the CCRC itself. They had a number for Yanni Denike, but we did not go through. We couldn't contact the family. Tian Krause, there was no contact details, nothing.
And where is his body now?
I don't know if he was buried, but it is at the mortuary in Bronkhorstspruit Council.
Is it still there?
I really am not sure.
Council. Who have I? Oh, Advocate Krause.
Thank you, Justice Museneke. Ms. Noile, I appear for the survivors of this project. Most of the questions that I wanted to ask is already being asked, so I'll be very brief with you. Can you just tell us, do you know why the Life Esidimeni contract was cancelled? Did they tell you at any stage why you had to take these patients, in other words?
The information I got was that there were costs that were being cut. Life Esidimeni was charging around 10,000 per patient.
Per day, per month?
I'm not sure. I am not sure, council. So that is why the license was not the license, the patients were being taken out.
So it was a cost issue, you were told?
I was told, yes. Yes, council.
Did you ever raise with them when you realized now you can't cope, that money is not important where lives are concerned?
You know, council, right now as we're sitting here, it seems as if it was easy to be in connection or in contact with the people who were running the project. I did try several times to let them know, as we were now running the project and seeing it's so costly. But the same answer, again, I will repeat, the same answer was that everything will be sorted out after the discharge of patients.
So you told them in no uncertain terms that it was a costly exercise?
Yes, I did, council.
I'm going to refer you to an exhibit, ELAH10, if somebody can perhaps provide you with that exhibit. While we're looking for the document, do you know somebody by the name of Pieter de Jager?
Yes, I do, council.
And who is he?
Pieter de Jager was one of the committee members of the families of the patients that were there in our center, Siabadinga.
He wasn't part of your NGO itself?
She had a sister that was in our NGO.
I'm just going to, just as I'm seeing that we're still looking for the document, but could I perhaps continue, not to waste time, and just read the first paragraph of the letter?
Yes, please do.
Ma'am, you don't have the letter in front of you, but it's dated the 28th of June 2016. So it was after you received your first patients, but before you were terminated.
Yes.
And it says, my name is Pieter de Jager and I'm on the Siabedinga NGO committee and therefore presenting the parents and the guardians of all patients in care of the current NGO Siabedinga under management of Diana Moyile. Would that be an accurate description of who he was?
Yes, Council.
He then raised a few concerns in this letter.
You call them few, Council?
I was perhaps being euphemistic, Justice. I would really want to go through them with you.
Okay.
I'm going to give you my... Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. I have it, Council.
You have it.
Yes,
could you just turn to the document? It was basically to the department and to the role players in this department that this letter was written. Do you agree?
Yes, Council.
Now, in paragraph 1, on page 1, he says all medication and chronic medication was ceased and placed as a responsibility of the NGO Siabedinga. Do you agree with that? That your clients did not get proper medical treatment?
Where is that, Council? I'm sorry. Which paragraph?
The first paragraph, under please see below our combined feedback with regard to the current state of this issue and our concerns and actions thereof. First paragraph. It is in the first paragraph, the fourth line from the bottom of that, fifth line from the bottom.
Yeah, I can see that now, Council. Thank you.
Do you agree with that?
What was the...
that chronic medication was ceased and placed at the responsibility of Siabedinga.
Yes, the medication was put under us. I don't know if I really understand the question.
Did you have let me just take a little bit further.
Thank you.
This is chronic medication.
Yes, Council.
Did your patients get chronic medication? Medication?
They did for the period of 2 weeks because when they came from the hospital, they were only given medication for 2 weeks.
And thereafter, they didn't have medication.
Thereafter, we struggled because we were told that we will now get medication from the local clinics, of which that is what we did. We went to the local clinic, which is a Refilwe clinic, and we were told that there was no budget for us. Dr. Manamela was called by the CEO of that time, Ms. Nyatu, to say that Siabedinga is struggling. They have patients that are running out of medication. And now we're going to have a problem. And Dr. Manamela said that was going to be fixed. I was not part of that conversation. I was not in. I'm just it's talking of what I had. And at that time, Mr. Pitsi, who works at the Department of Health as well, in Tshwane, was called as well. But at the end of the day, we were told to go to the pharmacy, to the regional pharmacy in Tshwane. But it was after a struggle, Council.
So just in short, there was a period
that we had about 23, speaking under correction, 23 patients that did not have chronic medication.
Yes, but it goes more than chronic medication. It also goes to psychiatric medication, and that's why the local clinic couldn't provide them with that. That's why you had to go to the regional hospital.
Yes, Council.
Paragraph 2, I just want to check with you, were you paying 28,000 Rand per month for the 4 wards?
I was supposed to. I was going to pay that when the Department of Mental Health had paid. That was the agreement.
So you didn't pay the amount?
I did not pay the amount, Council.
Then Mr. De Jager says that there is the minimal infrastructure. He refers to a 2-plate stove to prepare food for 73 patients. What do you say to that?
We did not have 2-plate stoves. We had a 4-burner gas stove, and we had a 4-plate of the electric stove council.
Yes, let's just put that in time. At the time when you wrote this letter, did you have the
At the time that this letter was written, council, those things were already there, because the kitchen things were put in the kitchen on the 13th of May 2016.
So that is wrong.
That is not true.
Okay, and one small washing machine to do all the laundry and linen?
We had one laundry machine and one dryer at the time of the writing of the letter, council.
Was that sufficient?
It was not sufficient because we did some of the washing by hand.
Even the 4-plate stove. Assuming Mr. De Jager is right, I mean, would that have been adequate for 73 people?
It was a 4-burner gas stove, these big ones with legs.
How many plates? I mean,
it's 4-burner. It's 4 plates. The ones that have legs. I think I have a picture of it in our profile.
And you said it was enough to cook for 73 people?
It was enough, in my opinion, Justice.
You see, these people died of hunger, most of them. Dehydration and it's not malnutrition, the other word. Low levels of nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And you're giving us this hunky-dory picture of everything being right, and all the evidence points to the opposite end. You know what I mean?
Yes,
this detail is gone through to demonstrate to you that you did not have enough to look after these people. And you keep on coming back and saying, no, it was enough. I don't understand this.
Justice, I did not say everything was well. I think I did admit several times that at that time, when the thing was happening, I thought, but now sitting it and looking at it, I see that things were not done the right way.
You see, if you had everything you needed, you wouldn't have gone out to ask for donations and to ask for clothes and ask for food. And isn't it quite obvious that you were under-resourced, and Mr. De Jager is correct?
I don't dispute everything he has said, Justice. I agree, even the first paragraph that you were saying, and I even explained that we even washed the clothes.
Fabricate all of this.
He did not fabricate
anything. He wrote it in
anything.
July. I mean, why would he make these things up? He's a committee member, is concerned, and takes the time and the energy to write line by line what he observes. But the suggestion that he might be untruthful startles me.
Justice,
because all the things point towards almost lack of resources.
There was a lot of lack of resources, Justice.
Please go ahead, Counsel.
Thank you. Ma'am, if I can turn to paragraph 7. It says Dr. Manamela has been involved and reported very aggressive towards staff at CI Bedinga in a lot of discussions with the CEO of CCRC and with yourself, and no positive outcomes has been founded. Is that a true reflection?
Yes, Counsel.
Were your staff treated aggressively by Dr. Manamela?
Yes, Counsel.
Can you give us an example?
I would give you an example of the 18th of June, 2016. It was a Saturday. At that time, we were operating in 4 wards, as the lease agreement said. That afternoon, Dr. Manamela came into the center. And he told the staff, my staff, that we're only gonna use 2 wards as from that day.
Sorry to interrupt you. Dr. Malamela, is the he or she?
She.
She, yes.
Did I say he? I'm sorry.
No, I'm just wanting to make sure that I've got it right. Yes.
Thank you, Council. He told us there's another NGO that is coming that's going to take over 2 wards. Now, the capacity of the wards is 25. At that time, we only occupied 3 wards, which was we had 73 patients. And then he came and he literally moved the patients herself from one of the wards to pack patients in 1 ward. We ended up having around 52 patients in a ward of 25. So that is the example I would use of acting aggressively to the staff. The reason he literally pushed the patient was that
What do you mean herself?
Herself, physically pushing the patient with a bed, not shoving, but physically taking the patient from the ward into the other ward.
And the aggressiveness to your staff, did they trying to stop this? Why would you say she was aggressive to your staff?
I would say that because the report I got was that they said she cannot move patients without notifying me or saying anything to me. And she said, these are the patients of Department of Mental Health. These are our patients. The mental health department has made a decision. Siabadinga is going to use only 2 wards.
That would then coordinate with paragraph 7, which says, according to Dr. Manamela, it has been decided at the Department of Health that there will be a second NGO placed on the same premises as Siabadinga and use the same facilities. Then the writer continues, overburdening existing mental health facilities runs the risk of inadequate treatment of patients with acute mental illnesses. Do you agree with that?
I agree, Council.
And then he says, Siabadinga patients has been moved into 2 wards without proper consent of caretakers, patients or guardians. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree, Council.
I'm not going to go through the whole of the letter. Could I just ask you, one of the questions that the writer is posing is, who has done a proper investigation to move sexually active patients into a ward with other immobile mental health patients? And that's paragraph 6 at the bottom of the 2nd page. Can you comment on that at all?
That was one of our concern, Councillor, when the patients were packed in 1 ward, because there was no I don't know if I may say it's criteria, or there was no saying this one is severe, this one is active. It was just a matter of pushing the patients into one ward. So I would agree with this.
It's a dangerous practice.
Very dangerous.
Council, if you have more questions, I intend to take the tea break now, and you may proceed after tea.
Thank you, Justice.
Okay. We're going to take the tea break, and we'll see you when we're back at 12 o'clock.
Thank you.
That's Issa Damani taking a tea break right now. The arbitration process underway there. But as you know, the unveiling of OR Tambo at the OR International Airport is taking place. His son is on the podium.
Because I'm not here on my own account, I'm here as a representative of the Tambo family. So I'd like to start by asking the members of the family who are here, Tambos and Sukudus, to please stand. Thank you. I'd also like to ask the artists and our team at Koketso and at the National Heritage Monument, who are also here and have worked tremendously hard over the past few months to stand. Some of them are on that table. Please stand, all of you. Thank you. This has been a really great occasion, and a great occasion for all of our family, for our friends, not just in South Africa, but across the world. And we've been getting messages throughout this centenary year about the different activities, the different forms of human expression that have taken place throughout the year across all provinces. And it's really been a wonderful thing. But today is special. When my father died, I had in my mind, as I think Tembi and our family did, this image of him arriving at the pearly gates of Valhalla, heaven to some of you, and being greeted by his predecessors, fellow freedom fighters who had fought and gone up there before him, that he would be welcomed by the predecessors and given a standing ovation and congratulated on a life well led, that he would be told, you had purpose, you delivered, the mission impossible you were given, you accomplished. Welcome to heaven, Oliver. That was my image. But I also questioned, would he be remembered by this generation and by the generations in the future? Would they be remembered as a whole? And today, I think, confirms that not only since '94 have the movement cherished the idea of liberation heritage being fostered to balance the scales of colonial and apartheid heritage that exist across the length and breadth of this country, but that in OR's case, something special had to happen. So when a brilliant man who was the previous executive mayor of Ekurhuleni, Duma Nkosi, who, by the way, I think is also here, when Duma said, let's name the airport after OR, it wasn't easy, it took a while, but it was a stroke of brilliance, because people would now arrive at this airport, and let's not forget, Dad was not well when he came back. So he wasn't as well known as many of the other leaders to the normal person on the street. But by doing that, it forced people to ask this question: who was Oliver Tambo? Why is he so special to his people that they name Africa's biggest airport after him? So I would like us to just give a round of applause. I know it took Cabinet and the government as a whole, but to Duma Nkosi, because that really was a stroke of genius. Are you here? There he is. We owe you so much, my brother. Since the airport was opened, my mother and I were a little obsessed with having a statue in this airport. I went through 4 ministers of transport, 3 CEOs of AXA, and about 11 years of campaigning to have a statue in the airport, to have along the broadwalks and arrivals and domestic corridors something that said, Johnny Walker, Lutuli Tambo, 1957. Johnny Walker, bells, etc., etc. But to have this presence and to show him, because at the time the airport was opened, there was one picture of him in the dashiki after the stroke. There was one terrible bust of him. But throughout the length and breadth of South Africa, there was not a single statue of OR. So we were quite obsessed with having a statue in there. At one point, we were told, no, we can have one outside. And my mother said, but why must people go and look for him? This airport is named after him. It must be inside the airport. So, Mum, it's your day. It's happened. So it's a wonderful way to celebrate the centenary of this great man. When one thinks about this airport, it is so special. The President will remember the day OR and Mama Tambo arrived back. You were there to greet them, Mr. President. And we had been through a number of African countries where OR had wanted to thank the leaders of those countries with a delegation of ANC leaders, hopping from one place to another. But as we passed over the border of Botswana, and the pilot said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you are now entering the borders of South Africa," the plane erupted, singing, crying, people toy-toying, hugging each other, to the point whereby the air hostess had to say in a very stern voice, "You can't toy-toy on a plane. Please sit down." But it was very emotional. We arrived at this airport, and all the airport workers on the tarmac downed tools, and we saw this sea of uniforms coming to the plane to greet us, followed by our president, Joe Slovo, and all of those who had, of necessity, had to precede him and start organizing things in the country. Very emotional. They had tried, de Klerk's regime had tried to stop people coming to the airport. They'd blocked highways, they'd stopped buses, they were outside train stations, and yet tens of thousands of people came to greet him, right outside there, came to greet him and welcome him home. I believe it was one of the happiest days of his life, and it took place at this airport that was later to be named after him. So a really great day. Age is making me refer to my glasses, sorry. He was arriving after 30 years of struggle and 30 years in exile. And as you'll see from the statue, we have him arriving. He's coming off a 1960s plane, and he's descending the last two steps of that plane. It's a beautiful statue, but then I love all statues because I believe in heritage. I believe that it's a soft vengeance when you take someone like a Chris Hani, who was killed by the fascists, and you remember him as a nation. You remember him and store him in public memory. It's a sort of soft vengeance. It's to say to all those who preceded us, all our freedom fighters and our leaders who are now up in heaven, that we will remember you, despite their attempts to airbrush you out of history. We will remember you, and we'll be guided by your very great example. It's also, of course, part of the cultural economy of any country that you have heritage and heritage tourism. And I believe that one of the greatest resources South Africa has is its history, and then the interpretation of that history into heritage. It's important for the cultural economy, but it's also important for our people that they grow up almost naturally knowing the history of the movement, the history of the struggle, and the icons, known and unknown, who carried out that over many, many generations. So this is a piece of heritage that has been put into this airport, and we can only thank the Ministry of Transport, AXA. And in talking about AXA, you have the most brilliant staff, Bongani Maseko. Thank you for your personal belief and vision. And thank you to all your staff, because they really are world class. Sometimes when I'm going through the airport, people will think that the Tambos run it and manage it. And I'll get people coming up to me and saying, "Mr. Tambo, my suitcase has disappeared. What are you going to do about it?" You know, or my plane was cancelled and things. So I always refer them to you, Bongani. I don't give them your number, but in future I might. But it is, and before this statue, I would always say to Bongani and previous AXA CEOs that you are honouring him, even though you haven't yet put in a statue, you're honouring him in the excellence with which you run this airport, in the beautiful experiences people have here. An airport is a place of much emotion. Even as we were putting in the statue, we saw people greeting each other and hugging, others saying goodbye. Tremendous emotion takes place in that airport. And we now believe a lot of that emotion is also going to go to this gorgeous statue, that people will hug it, take selfies with it, emulate its stance, etc., all those lovely things. But more importantly, in 50 years, in 100 years, in 300 years, when many of us have forgotten what these people looked like, when they're pages in a history book, they will still know what OR looked like. His statue will still be at this airport and a symbol of what this generation did in terms of heritage. The statue itself, as you will have seen, depicts him coming off a 1960s plane. In our research, we saw a number of pictures of him coming off planes and carrying suitcases. And as you know, he did that for 30 years with his colleagues. 30 years of traveling, 30 years of airports, visas, visa requirements, transit lounges, arrivals halls, all to petition different people and their government on behalf of his people, on behalf of his movement, for sanctions and assistance in our struggle. So he was crisscrossing the globe, and we depict him crisscrossing the globe through the suitcase that he's carrying. On the side, it shows all these different places, continents and cities and countries that he went to. As Paulo Jordan said, he was leading the greatest international solidarity campaign of the 20th century, only really to be compared with the anti-slavery campaigns in the century before. But the anti-apartheid struggle was embraced by the whole world, and that travel represents that. He is depicted coming off the last two steps of an aeroplane. That symbolizes him arriving in different places all over the world on behalf of his movement, arriving with his suitcase and arriving with this story he wanted to tell to get their support for his people. But it also depicts his final two steps that he took in his life, because the stroke had happened then. One of those steps was his arrival back and the warm embrace he received from his people, both at the airport and across this country for the next couple of years before his passing. And to me personally, those two steps also symbolize his arrival, as I said at the beginning, in heaven. So they're largely symbolic. They have tremendous meaning, and it's a beautiful, beautiful sculpture. I would like our artists, Khao Mashilo, Pabalo Magela, and Zelda Stroud, just to stand, please, because they're the ones who made this incredible piece, and they really sweated. You can imagine having... You can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, having his son leaning over your shoulder whilst you're making a sculpture. So it was a nerve-wracking thing. Well done, guys. Brilliant work. I'd also like to acknowledge our team, as I said, led by Sarah Haynes. Sarah is one of the foremost heritage and sculptural experts on the whole continent of Africa, dedicated to liberation heritage, dedicated. And she leads a team of experts who are getting daily renown in what they do. We're also joined by, because I'm sure you'll have seen there are posters all over the airport, and we hope, Mr. Minister and Bongani, that we'll see more posters like that of OR. They were created and designed by Sanya and Tati. I don't know if they're here, but if they could stand. Brilliant, brilliant work. As I say, we're a collective, we're a team of people who are all dedicated to heritage. So this is a victory for all of us, I believe. It's a great, great day. It's made greater. Is Tembi here? Oh dear. Okay. So let me move on. Is it possible for somebody to call her? It's quite an important moment, sorely, if you can. Other than that, I'd really like to thank the people of South Africa in the way that you have honored OR in different ways with different expressions. Lady Smith Black Mambazo are doing it with song. Others are doing it in memorial lectures, poetry, dance, choral music. there are so many methods being used to honor this humble man of whom we all feel proud. And a centenary only comes, as we know, once in a while. So this has been really delicious in all its forms of expression, and I would love for you to join me now in another special moment. As I said, it's his 100th year, but it's the 60th year, and today is the 60th birthday of my sister Thembi. So he had her, here she comes. Dad had her when he was 40. And so they've shared this day. The incredible thing about her was when they were young, they used to call each other twin. He called her twin. He gave her actually 10 names, but he ended up calling her twin because she looked like him, she thought like him, and they were extremely tight. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in singing Happy Birthday to Thembi Tambo. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Thembi. Happy birthday to you. Tem, I believe our mother and father are looking down from Valhalla. They're smiling, looking at you and thinking about the things you've done in your life, the accomplishments, and who you are. I think they're very, very proud of you. Happy birthday. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for all your support in this project. Please tell everyone about it. It's really one of the greatest compliments that could be paid to Oliver Tambo. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dali. Happy birthday, Sister Thembi. May you see many, many more. A very happy birthday to you. Dali, I'll wait for you because I want to address you. You know, Dali, there was a rumor that was going on in the camps, and you know the radio, we used to call it Radio Potato. And Radio Potato used to go by a rumor that said you used to call us my daddy's soldiers. I'd never heard you say that, but I'm told you used to refer to us as my daddy's soldiers. And indeed, we were your daddy's soldiers. One of the most senior of his soldiers, I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. The protocol of today, I will set aside because we are celebrating a very, very humble man. And in the humility of me calling you to stand up, please indulge me, Mr. President. If you could just stand up, just to show you one of the products of this illustrious leader, followed by the Treasurer General of the ANC, another product of this illustrious leader, another product of that generation. Minister Jeff Radebe, another product. The bodyguards of President OR, can they please stand up? I saw two. There's one there. There's another one. Those are the people that made sure that our leader was safe in all of the years. Another one is the CEO of AXA, Bongani Masego, another MK cadre as well. Thank you very much, Masochaga Lutuli, Masochaga Tambo. And of course, moi, the Honorable, also one of President OR soldiers. If you would remember, Mr. President, TG and Babu Mlangeni, every January 8th statement of President OR Tambo was peppered with MK this, MK that. The women of South Africa this, the women of South Africa that. The youth of South Africa this, the youth of South Africa that. So he was a man that was grounded in the love of his people. You said, Dali, that South Africans honored your father. He paid more. He honored South Africans more than they have honored him. And again, just to thank Comrade Duma, who has really put this name at the center of South Africa, where everybody who goes and comes into South Africa will remember that this man was South Africa's best brand strategist. He created South Africa. He held South Africa together. And today we celebrate this beautiful country because of OR. Thank you very much. Could I then invite the Minister of Transport to say a few words? Minister Masonga.
Thank you, program directors, my colleagues, Bungani, Comrade Jeff Hadebe, the Minister in the Presidency, also Minister Ayanda Tlotlo, Minister for Home Affairs, Minister for International Relations, Minister Wana Mashavani, our Deputy Minister of Transport, Deputy Minister Chikunga, the TG of the ANC, Comrade Dr. Zelim Kize, our stalwart, our veteran, Tate Mlangeni, the mayor, the executive mayor of the city, Comrade Masina, the Tambo family present here, government officials, all the people who are here. We are very happy as the Department of Transport to host the stalwart Oliver Reginald Tambo for our airport to be named after him. It is a befitting honor because, President, this is, as the program directors have said, one of the busiest port of entry in the world, not only in Africa. It's an area of economic activity. It's like a city within a city because there are almost 35,000 employees who are working in this area. Airports are not the traditional way as you used to know airports as a transit point. Today, when you come into OR Tambo International, we have like a setup of a mall because we have got more than 140 retail stores with a size of 26,000 square meters. And there are plans to grow this airport to be much bigger than it is. It is going to be a hive of activities. The mayor likes talking about the Aerotropolis as a city. So, Comrade Dali Tambo, it was befitting for President OR to be named after this airport. It's not just an ordinary airport. And it is an area of tourist attraction. And as you have said, on a regular basis, almost 6 months, we are going to be changing the posters that are there on the columns with different quotations. As you have seen there at the arrival terminal around the statue, there are columns with the pictures of President OR Tambo with different quotations. So from time to time, we'll change the photos, we'll get them from you and from the ANC and the archives and write the quotations of President Tambo. So it's also not going just to be a tourist attraction. It will also be an archive where people will come and gather information about OR Tambo. It is very important to honor this giant. It's not only about honoring Oliver Tambo, it is also honoring a generation of the 1940s who are the founder members of the ANC Youth League, Mtolisi Majombos, William Nkomo, Anton Lembede, Nelson Mandela, Walter and Albertina Sisulu, and many others. And this generation was characterized by the spirit of selflessness and the spirit of volunteerism. So we are very happy that this event is taking place within the October month. Thanks very much, President, for gracing our event to come and unveil the statue, also unveiling the bust at the ATNS Tower, as well as the mural. We are very happy about that. Thanks very much, Program Director.
Thank you, Minister Maswanganyi, the Minister of